I worked as a psychiatric nurse and I really didn't see people get better. I saw them manage, but I saw the same people come back again and again. And in my mind, I probably was only about 21, 22 then. I thought, this really isn't working. And then I fell in love and my partner and I decided to have a baby and move to a rainforest. And I started to get really interested in health. And it was probably an experience with my first child that really turned the corner for me. She had an earache over 6 weeks, 4 courses of antibiotics, and they were about to give her the 5th course. I have felt the frustration of a young mother not wanting to give more drugs, but not knowing what else to do. And so when my next baby had an earache, I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't tell anyone because you get a lot of pressure. I went to the old lady next door. So I was probably about 26. She was 86. I said, what did your mother do when you had an earache? She said, burn up an onion on the stove. I did. I wrapped it in a cloth and wrapped it on his ear. I wrapped it to the point where it wasn't going to hurt him, and he slept for 2 hours. And I think James is 45 now and he's never had another earache. I was sold. I thought, wow, there is another way. And I thought there must be more. So that's when I began to explore. And it was probably only a year after that, another very important thing happened in my life. I began to read the Bible and I became interested because of some neighbours who were Seventh-day Adventists. A pivotal part of their beliefs is looking after the body and treating the body naturally when you get sick rather than going for drug medications. I look back now and see how God was leading me and working in my life. That really opened my eyes. I thought, what does God want? How does God want us to treat our bodies? So that put another aspect on it. Well, once I started having babies, I did not work again. So I was a busy lady. And then I had a 3rd and 4th child and they had different ailments. And so as I treated them, I was learning. I had books on water therapy. I had books on herbs. And it was probably once I'd had 4 children that some of my girlfriends said to me, you never go to the doctor. What do you do when your children are sick? And I started to share with them the little bits I did. Some of them laughed. And some of them said, oh, in a crisis, I just run to the doctor. And that's when I thought, I could give meetings. I really believe that God prompted me to do that. I just saw there was a lack. Here's the information, but the child is sick. It's joining those two together. And so I started giving meetings. And I used to use my children. I'd wrap them up in poultices and have their feet in hot water in buckets. And I think that was about 1992 when I gave my first set of meetings. And little by little, I guess it grew from there. But then something else happened in my life which really zoomed things along. And that was, I was a single mother for 4 years. My first husband was a drug addict and an alcoholic. My daughters went to work at a health retreat. And 6 months after moving there, the manager of the health retreat asked me to marry him. And that was my husband today, Michael O'Neill. And a year after we married, he said, I'm going to open my own health retreat. Our kids were the staff because my eldest daughter could massage, my next daughter could cook, the boys could garden. Michael's daughter was good on the computer. There was his secretary. I said, who will be the health director? He said, you. I said, oh no, I'm just a mother and I just help other mothers. He said, no, you'll be good. And he walked out of the room. So I became the reluctant health director. We married 1997, so that's 1998. I was so glad. God is so good because I know that all his biddings are his enablings. I've always been very shy and very quiet and would rather be in the background. My husband is not. The first health retreat we ran, we had 1 guest. I could handle that. And then little by little more came and more came. And as more guests came and the different ailments they had, I'd study up on them. And then I did a nutrition course and became a certified nutritionist. I was also granted in the grandfather clause a diploma in naturopathy. It is not recognised today, but in the 1990s it was. If a person had done a lot of accepted work and well-known work in the field, they could be granted the grandfather clause. And so I had a diploma in naturopathy and nutrition. And then we just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I think the main reason why I became under the eye of the authorities is nothing I had done, because I always say, how can there be a crime if there's no victims? And there's certainly no victims. But my husband in 2016 started a political party. Today it's called HEART. It's Health, Environment, Accountability, Rights and Transparency. A journalist said to him, Michael, are you prepared to lose all your money, your business, your house, your reputation? Michael said, I am. I'm not 30, and this is an important issue. What Michael was not prepared for, that they targeted me, and they did. I spoke at a convention, and the next day up on the website, the people who are pro-vax put out a call. They said, are there any volunteers? We need to take this woman down. 3 volunteers came up. I've never met them. They've never been to our retreat, but they went through everything that I'd said and came up with some ludicrous claims, like if you give a baby goat's milk, could be fatal. These were the claims. The Healthcare Complaints Commission banned me on these ludicrous claims. My ban is that I have a life ban. I'm forbidden to give any advice in Australia. I am forbidden to speak on health in Australia, or $10,000 fine and 10 years in prison. This is the Australia of today, unfortunately. This was 2019. 2020, we were all locked down. So I did Zooms from my mountain home. All around the world I did Zooms. And in 2021, they contacted me again and they said, we notice you're doing Zooms. This is a violation of your prohibition order, final warning, or 3 years in prison. So it's a very real threat. I think they'd have a tough time now because in the last 6 months, as I'm sure you realise, TikTok and Instagram, it's gone crazy. We have a little bit of a giggle because they tried to ban me in Australia, but the very banning of me seems to have just opened the door worldwide. I think of Psalm 146 in verse 9. It says, the ways of the wicked God can turn upside down. There is a higher power here, and that's who I work for. I work for the higher power. I believe that God gave us the right to be our own doctor because we've all got different histories, different makeups, different DNAs, different childhoods, different exposure to different things. So I always like to look at the history because that can often tell you, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But when the body cries for help, it cries to us through symptoms. And just as medicine treats symptoms, it masks the symptoms. But when we're looking at healing the body naturally, we hear the symptoms and we try natural remedies. And sometimes the body will say, I like that. And it says that because we get a relief. And if it doesn't quite like it, we adjust until we get something that we like. So I spend a lot of time teaching people, please listen to what your body's saying. And that Psalm 146 I just mentioned, in verse 3, it says, put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. So who are the princes? They're the authorities. They're the authorities in the field, the authorities in government, the authorities in medicine, the authorities in health. I believe God wants us to question and work it out. And 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, God says, I've not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. See, what a sound mind does is it receives the information and it assesses it. And it's not hard to assess what is in everything today. I'll give you a little illustration. When I was a little girl, everything I wore was cotton underwear, cotton socks, cotton dresses, and a woolen jumper when it got cold. But today, look at the fabrics. Many fabrics have been created in a chemical laboratory, and our skin has millions of little pores. Putting these chemical fabrics on the skin, that's another way that the chemicals are getting into our body, causing an imbalance in our endocrine system, an imbalance in our lymphatic system, an imbalance in so many areas of our body. There's so many things. And then on top of all that, we've got the mental aspect. Our mind plays a huge role. And I know in the Aboriginal culture, you may not have heard that traditionally if someone was worthy of death, the bone was pointed at them and they would die within 24 hours. There's nothing about this bone, it's just that they believed they would die, and so they would. And we see it in some ways today when a doctor says to a patient, you have cancer, you will be dead in 3 months, and often they die exactly at 3 months. So if someone tells me they've been told that, I say to them, have you rejected that? That's the first thing. Please reject that. Put not your trust in princes. They may not be right. Work it out. Weigh up the pros and cons. It's not hard to do that today with Google. You can look at the side effects of every medication. You can have a look at what these long names mean. Take a magnifying glass everywhere you go. Everything you buy, what's in it? They don't realize that these fabrics are little by little killing them. They don't realize that that sunscreen is full of chemicals. They don't realize that broccoli that looks so green and nice is actually full of chemicals. We need to investigate and find out, what are we putting into our body? It's time not to trust the princes, the authorities. Listen to them, but examine what they say. Does this make sense? I mean, that's what a sound mind does. It says, what is this? What's the result of this? Where did this come from? Will this harm my body? Or will this help my body? And that's, I believe, the God-given right of each one of us is that I am the master of my destiny. I am the one that chooses what I do, what I don't do. And if someone says to me, but Barbara, I love the refined sugar, I'm just going to eat it. My response to that is, okay, it's your God-given right. Because it is. I'm sorry that you've chosen that. And if you want me to tell you, I will tell you what will happen. But if you don't want me to tell you, I respect your choice. And that is what God wants each one of us to do, is to respect each choice. But also, He wants us to find out what is in this. So when I broke my hand 9 weeks ago and the ambulance came, the ambulance officer jumped out of the ambulance with something green. I said, what's that? What's in that? I wanted to know what was happening. And then, of course, it's, yes, I will have that. No, thank you. I won't have that. It's our God-given right. The medical system today is really built on fear, and it's built on a theory that we evolved. And because we evolved, we can't heal. And so a drug is necessary to bring this about. I don't think doctors lie. I think most doctors are ethical, but the pharmaceutical is not, and it uses a lot of deception. Whereas God's method of healing is based on faith. Faith in an incredible body that was created to heal itself. And also God gave us herbs which can work with the body to bring about a healing condition or to boost healing. It works with the body, and that's the truth. So these two, as far as the East is from the West almost, these two systems, and we have a choice. And faith is not something you see. So when my arm was in plaster or half plastered for 6 weeks, I had faith that I could use my hand. And only 2 weeks ago, I could only bend it that much. Whoa, I can bend it right down there. But when I could only bend it this much, I had faith that the day would come when I could do that. And the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. If you can see it, it's not faith. God's method of healing requires faith. And it's not hard to have faith in the mighty God who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. So when I look at those two systems, I know the one I want to choose, and it's God's system, the system of faith. That is the system of truth. Cancer is a particularly interesting one. It's of interest to me because I always want to know the cause. And sadly in medicine today, that's not often assessed because there is always a cause. Newton's third law of motion, so every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. There's always a cause. So in every case, it can be different. But what I have found in cases of endocrine cancers, so that would be in women breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, and in men that would be testicular cancer, prostate cancer, there is always a hormone factor. And Dr. John Lee, I think it was back in the 1980s, he's the first doctor that really blew the whistle on this hormonal imbalance. You see, it was caused by the contraceptive pill. I was on the pill in the 70s. All my girlfriends were on the pill. No one ever blinked. No one ever thought anything about it. No one ever questioned. We put too much trust in the princess. And unfortunately, that contraceptive pill has caused so many problems. And if a woman's on the pill and gives birth to a woman or man child, both of them are born with a slight hormonal imbalance, but some more than others. So that's one aspect that's rarely addressed, is the role of hormones. But it was probably about 15 years ago the Australian Health Department stated that estrogen is a known human carcinogen. You see, estrogen causes cell proliferation, and that's what the pill does. It causes a rise in estrogen and a drop in progesterone. And progesterone, called mother hormone, that's the hormone that's designed to keep all of the others under control. So men and women with these cancers in the reproductive organs, the balancing of the hormones is essential. I have many books in my library at home by different people who have conquered cancers. Some of them are professors, some of them scientists, some of them nutritionists, some of them oncologists. So I look at the common denominators, and I've found 3 common denominators with cancer. Cancer loves an acid environment. So when people come to us to want help to conquer cancer, we look at alkalizing. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. The second common denominator is cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. So increasing oxygen content in the cell makes it difficult for cancer to survive. And the third one is that cancer thrives with high glucose. In fact, cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. And so this cancer cell thrives where there's no oxygen and lots of glucose. Professor Otto Warburg in 1946 got a Nobel Prize for discovering that. So a lady said to me, "Barbara, you'll be excited to know that they're doing tests on cancer, finding it can't survive when there's lots of oxygen and consumes high amounts of glucose." I said, "It's good to hear that, but did you know in 1946, Dr. Otto Warburg got a Nobel Prize for discovering that?" So it just shows that this is not new, and what I present is not new, but that's what we target. So looking at the alkaline environment, so encouraging an alkaline environment in the body because cancer loves the acid environment, that can be influenced by foods, it can be influenced by green drinks. When you drink those green drinks, they have a wonderful effect of alkalizing the tissue because they are very high in the alkaline minerals. One treatment that we've been giving our guests, and I got this off a Canadian doctor, very controversial though, my husband even stopped doing it for a while because of the attacks we were getting, it's sodium bicarbonate wraps. Dr. Tullio Simoncini, he was an Italian oncologist, he was injecting sodium bicarbonate straight into cancer and just seeing the cancer shrink because sodium bicarbonate is probably the ultimate alkalizer. Anyway, that poor doctor, I think he's in jail now on a charge of manslaughter. The pharmaceutical company can't patent sodium bicarb, can it? Apparently, one of his patients died. My husband said if only he'd injected them with chemotherapy, he would not be in jail on a charge of manslaughter. And so we wrap people up in these sodium bicarbonate wraps. I was unaware of this happening, but I demonstrated it for a doctor in New Zealand, and he filmed it and put it up on YouTube. You can Google my name at sodium bicarbonate wraps and it shows you how to do it. So that's alkalizing from the outside, alkalizing from the inside with the green drinks and a more alkaline diet. So looking at oxygen, we have 2 hyperbaric chambers in our health retreat in Australia. So when people come to us wanting help cancer, they may have hyperbaric chambers. Some might have them every day, and a hyperbaric chamber is oxygen being forced into the body under pressure. Henry's law states that more oxygen goes into liquid when it's under pressure. So that's the reasoning behind it. The other way you can help to oxygenate your body is through a special little device. It's our own air purifier, and it's called Nose. There's a book called Breath by James Nestor who really expands on that principle. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil, and what castor oil does is it's able to break up any unnatural formations. It'll even break up a bone spur, but it won't break up a bone. So the castor oil comes in and it knows what to break down and what not to break down. I have met ladies who have conquered their breast cancer by wearing castor oil compresses on the breast. One lady said to me, "I just wear it 24/7, and you certainly can do that. We have seen it help with cancers in other areas, also brain cancer. It's a little bit hard to wear a compress on the brain, but you can rub it in. It's a sticky oil. One lady said she's got a little woolen beanie and she just devotes that to putting it over when she's rubbed that castor oil. And it will penetrate. It takes a bit longer because it's such a thick oil. There's been many studies done over the years, especially on minerals and how you feed the rats high nutrition, the cancer goes. But the rats that aren't on the high nutrition, the cancer thrives. There are many studies. Dr. Colin Campbell, in his book China Study, touches on it. We're exposed to environmental poisons, even when we choose not to be. I'm sure every time I fly, I am. But I have endeavoured to create in my body an environment where they're not going to go for because there's nothing to feed them. I keep to the basic laws of health. I make sure I go to bed early every night. I drink lots of water. I eat nourishing food. I'm running up and down hills every morning, so I am giving to my body everything that I know that it needs to be able to live on planet Earth in 2020. It's the most powerful way to oxygenate your body. So it is a possibility that cancer can be conquered. And the first place to start really is in your house. Make sure your house is healthy. Make sure it's clean. Make sure there's no mold. Start drinking more water. Start going to bed a little bit earlier. We just start with the simple things and start buying organic food and just little by little start to change around, and ideally find a health retreat. Another one I know that has an excellent cancer program is Eden Valley in Denver, Colorado, and I know that they do fever baths. That's another treatment, and I know they have a few hyperbaric chambers. If possible, I think a health retreat's a great start. And just start where you're at on the little bits and pieces. God gave us an incredible body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself, and it can heal itself when it's given the right conditions.